Hello, everyone. I'm sure all of you here know what a watermelon looks and tastes like. However, not everyone knows about the origin of the watermelon, right? Today, I will tell you about the origin of the watermelon according to the way we Vietnamese think of it. Okay, let's get started. Once upon a time, there was a young man named Mai An Tiem. He originally came from a distant country beyond the southern seas, but later he was sold into slavery. One day, the merchants brought him to sell to King Hung Vuong as a slave. My An Tiem was bright and quickly learned how to speak Vietnamese. Moreover, he remembered many stories, knew a lot about common knowledge, and had various skills. Because he was talented and hardworking, the king grew increasingly fond of him and always kept him close by. When My An Tiem was 35 years old, he was promoted to the position of the king's attendant and even had his own house right next to the king's palace. My An Tiem's wife was the king's adopted daughter, and they had a 5-year-old son. Their household had enough servants, and they lacked nothing in terms of delicacies or rare items. Although his power was not very great, he was highly respected by those around him. As a result, many people frequently came to him seeking favors or assistance. However, because of My An Tiem's high status, there were also those who envied and resented him. One day, at a banquet to entertain the guests, while everyone was competing to flatter and praise, My An Tiem modestly said to them, "It's nothing much. Everything in this house is simply a result of my past life's deeds." Mai spoke very naturally. This was because the religion in his homeland believed that one's current happiness or suffering was the result of good or bad deeds in a previous life. However, among the guests at the banquet were several of the king's close attendants, who had long harbored jealousy towards My An Tiem. When they heard him speak, they seized upon his words, interpreting them as arrogant, and hurried to the palace to report everything to the king. Upon hearing their story, King Hung was furious. He roared, "How insolent! If he dares to speak like this today, who knows what disrespectful words he will say tomorrow? He's a treacherous slave. Arrest him immediately." That very afternoon, soldiers arrived at My An Tiem's house, arrested him, and threw him into prison. At that moment, he realized he had misspoken and angered the king. He thought to himself, "If I am to be punished now, it must be due to my wrongdoings in a past life." Meanwhile, at the court, all the officials were summoned to discuss how to deal with My An Tiem. Many suggested executing him, while others proposed cutting his Achilles tendons. However, an old official offered a suggestion that caught King Hung's attention. "He deserves death, no doubt. However, before he dies, we should make him fully understand and deeply regret that all the wealth he enjoyed was granted by your Majesty's grace, not his so-called past life's merits. I have heard that there is a deserted island off the coast of Ningasun. We should send him there with 1 to 2 months' provisions so that he can reflect on his past life's deeds before he meets his end." The old official's suggestion was unanimously supported, and King Hung agreed wholeheartedly. However, as he gave the order, the king added, "Make sure to give him provisions sufficient for an entire season. Remember that." On the day My An Tiem was exiled to the deserted island, despite everyone's objections, his wife decided to pack up and follow him. She also did not forget to bring their 5-year-old son along. Seeing her actions, no one approved. They all firmly believed it was a foolish and reckless decision. But she steadfastly believed in her husband's words. "Heaven gives birth to elephants, and then it gives birth to grass. What is there to worry about?" However, when she finally set foot on the desolate, vast sandy shore, she could not hold back the overwhelming feelings of despair and leaned on her husband's shoulder, sobbing, "We might die here." My An Tiem calmly held their son and reassured his wife, "Heaven always watches over us. We must stay strong. There is nothing to worry about." More than a month after arriving on the deserted island, My An Tiem's family life had gradually stabilized. The whole family lived in rock crevices, with the cave entrance covered with woven screens to keep out the wind and dew. They didn't have to worry much about drinking water, as there was a stream nearby. Although they didn't have salt, they used seawater as a substitute. However, their most pressing issue was how to sustain their lives. Both husband and wife looked at the nearly depleted rice bin and said sorrowfully, "If we just had a handful of seeds, we wouldn't have to worry about anything anymore." One day, a large flock of birds flew in from the west, covering the long, sandy shore. They then flew to Mayan Tiem and his wife's shelter, dropping about 5 or 6 black seeds. Not long after, these seeds sprouted and grew into vines that spread all over the beach. The once white sand was now covered in lush greenery. Wherever the green vines spread, they bore young green fruits. After some time, when Mayan Tiem and his wife checked on the fruits, they saw that the once small green fruits had grown rapidly, with smooth green skins, each as large as a human head. Curious about the strange fruit, Mayan Tiem picked one and cut it open, revealing a beautiful red flesh dotted with black seeds. The family tasted it and found it refreshingly sweet. The more they ate, the cooler and more refreshed they felt inside. Mayan Tiem joyfully exclaimed, "Wow, this is a type of melon we've never seen before. Let's call it Western melon, because the seeds were brought here by birds from the west, from the mainland to this small island. Heaven truly has eyes. It has given us a way to survive." From that day on, Mayan Tiem and his wife worked hard to plant more of these melon seeds on the beach. They planned to eat the melons instead of rice, conserving the little rice left in their bin. One day, a fishing boat accidentally strayed to the island and encountered Mayan Tiem and his wife. Mayan Tiem helped them repair their damaged boat and shared the melons with them. When they sailed back to the mainland, he gave them some melons to take with them. Mayan Tiem also told them that if they wanted more melons, they could bring rice to the island to trade for them. A few days later, the first boat arrived and anchored near the island's shore, bringing Mayan Tiem and his wife a considerable amount of white rice. According to their agreement, one side received the rice, while the other side cut the melons and loaded them onto the boat. From that day on, Mayan Tiem's family's daily meals changed completely. Sitting beside a pot of steaming white rice, Mayan Tiem's wife, holding their child in her arms, murmured, "Indeed, heaven has sustained our family." From then on, the couple continued to work hard to plant even more melons. As a result, not only did trading boats come, but fishing boats also arrived in droves, bringing rice, clothes, pigs, chickens, knives, axes, and various other seeds, all in exchange for the coveted melons. Everyone who brought their boats to the island told Mayan Tiem, "Truly, there has never been a melon as precious as this. In our homeland, everyone dreams of tasting this watermelon at least once, no matter how much rice they have to trade for it." People from all over competed to come to the island to buy melons and take seeds back to plant. Consequently, within just a few years, this melon variety had spread everywhere. Thanks to this, the fame of Mayan Tiem and his wife spread far and wide. Everyone respectfully called them the parents of the Western melon. Regarding King Hung, one day, while reprimanding his attendant for incompetence that led to the workers ruining a building, he lamented, "If only Mayan Tiem were here, this wouldn't have happened." That day, the king kept mentioning Mayan Tiem. He asked the Lac Marquis twice about Mayan Tiem's current whereabouts and activities. Not knowing the situation, the Lac Marquis blindly replied, "He's probably not around anymore." Despite this, the king was not convinced. He immediately provided provisions and a boat to a servant, ordering him to go to Shoai to find Mayan Tiem. After a month-long journey, the servant returned with a boat full of large Western melons and reported, "All these are offerings from Mr. and Mrs. Mayan Tiem to Your Majesty." He then recounted the hardships faced by Mayan Tiem's family when they were first exiled to the deserted island, as well as their current situation. He continued, "Now Mr. and Mrs. Mayan Tiem have a beautiful, spacious house on the island, more than 10 servants, a large melon field, rice paddies, and many chickens and pigs." The more he spoke, the more astonished and amazed King Hung became. The king then clicked his tongue and remarked to the attendants who had previously accused Mayan Tiem, he said everything was due to his past life's deeds, and he wasn't wrong. The king immediately dispatched a group of soldiers to the island to bring Mayan Tiem and his wife back and reinstated him to his former position. Additionally, he granted Mayan Tiem 2 maidservants as compensation for the past events. The island where Mayan Tiem's family once lived was then called An Tiem Beach. The descendants of Mayan and his wife on the island were numerous. Together, they established Mayan Village. The site of Mayan old house was transformed into a temple to honor Mr. and Mrs. Mayan. They were revered as the ancestors of Western melon, also known as watermelon. The story ends here. How do you feel about it? Please leave your comments below the video and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to give me more motivation to share more interesting stories. And now, goodbye, and see you in the next video.